Now that we've completed our work on the shirt, we're ready to recreate the pants from scratch. But this time, I'm going to use a slightly different approach, and we're going to create a belt that will pin the pants at the waistline. So let me hold down the Alt key, click on the visibility icon of the body. We'll use that as our collision object again. So here in the Retopo room, I just want to quickly mention that an alternative to using the manual retopology tools to create your low poly cloth mesh is to use a preset mesh from the Retopo models palette. So you can use the transform gizmo to scale it, move it, rotate. As in the sculpt workspace, when you're using the primitives tool or the import tool, this object that you see is just a preview. If you like what you have, then you can go ahead and hit the enter key to apply it, or you can hit the apply button here as well. 3D Code's going to ask if you want to snap it to the underlying voxel object. In this case, I do not. And now you can use the modeling tools here to make further modifications to it. You'll notice that 3D Code creates a new layer for you, and it places that mesh on that layer. That's slightly different than the new primitives tool that was introduced in build 4.7.13, in that it creates a new layer for the Retopo models. However, let's choose a cylinder, and we'll go ahead and move it into place. You can make adjustments to the height, the radius, top radius, bottom radius, cap subdivisions, height subdivisions, and so on. Once you are happy, you can just hit the apply button or the enter key. Another option is you can use click to place if you want to quickly align it onto a particular portion of your model. Once you click to place, you'll notice some options open up for scaling to your brush radius and using stroke direction. So let me uncheck these last two, and you'll see what happens if I click up here. All right, but if I click those, you see how that changes. It's constrained to the size of my brush radius, and it uses the orientation of the normals beneath the brush. And again, if I'm happy with that, I'll just hit the enter key, but I don't see anything. What's going on? Well, for one thing, I'm on a layer that's hidden. If I unhide this layer, now all of a sudden, if I step out of the tool, you can see it placed that mesh there, even though I couldn't see it. So I'm going to undo. And this time I need to create a layer for 3D Code to place this onto. So let's hit apply. And now you'll see it. Let's go ahead and delete that layer. So I found that when you're trying to create a cloth object, you may find Auto-Retopo to be the most efficient way of working. The problem is you could go in and delete all the polygons that you don't necessarily need, but there's a better way of going about this. So let's go to the sculpt room. And I want to quickly point out, if you're in surface mode, there is a slight problem to using this particular method. What we're going to do is we're going to hide the areas that we do not want to generate a mesh. But if we try to do it while we're in surface mode, it's going to create a problem, because wherever you hide the part, it's going to be hollow inside. So let me go ahead and quickly show how that works. If I use surface hide, you can see how it's a hollow object, and that will not work with Auto-Retopo. So let's go to geometry, unhide all. So we need a voxel version of this. I can either convert this to voxels by clicking on the S icon. In this case, I want to leave this intact, but I'm going to come down to the bottom of the Vox Tree Layer panel, and I'm going to click this Clone and Decrease Level of Details, or Clone and Degrade option. And that's going to create a voxel object, and it's also going to reduce the resolution. So I'll click that. You can see our polygon count is about 22 million polys here at the bottom. And now, with this new degraded copy, it's about 5 million. So Switch to a different shader. And I'll go to an orthographic view. And I'm going to use Vox Hide. I'll turn on symmetry. Hit escape to drop the initial creation of the spline. Right click my points until I have the point type that I want. Hit enter. Escape. Now we want to do it for the area above the waistline. I need to tilt this model a little bit because you can see the waistline here is a little bit sloped. So let's tilt it back just a bit. Hit escape. Right click again. I'm going to change it just a bit here. Now hit enter. Escape. So we're going to generate a mesh from this. If your model is symmetrical, before you begin to initiate the Auto-Retopo routine, then you're going to want to make sure you have symmetry turned on. So hit the S key and enable it. Right click and choose Auto-Retopo. In this case, just after a little bit of testing, I'm going to go with just about 900 polygons. You typically want to go a little bit higher than you think you might need. You can leave the other parameters at their defaults on an object like this. I don't need to paint areas where I need extra polygonal density, so I'll click next. Now, I could attempt to let 3D Coat try and do this on its own, but a lot of times I find that applying the stroke guides, where I especially want to make sure that I have a nice edge along the ends here, that I may need to go ahead and apply it just to tell 3D Coat emphatically that, hey, I want nice clean edges in this particular area. And that's going to just save me a little bit of extra cleanup work. So in this case, the strokes tool is already enabled. So I could just kind of paint stroke like that, but it's not very accurate. So let me go ahead and hold down the control key, and I can just click and place my points exactly where I want them. I'm going to hold down the control key and click on that last point to resume. I don't have to create this on both sides, just one. In fact, 3D Coat recommends not creating splines on both sides. All right. Do the same thing here. Control key. Just continue holding it down. Control key. I'm holding it down. I'll let up. You can hold control key again. All right. Now I could try and create some additional ones, but 3D Coat really likes fewer strokes, so less is more when you're working with Auto-Retopo. Let's hit next. Okay. It did a pretty good job, but we've got a little problem area here in the middle. So, not sure what to do about that. Whether to retry it again. I think I'll do that. So I'm going to just delete this layer. You'll notice that 3D Coat creates a new layer for you and places the mesh on it each time you run Auto-Retopo, so you don't have to create one yourself. All right. So let's go ahead now and go to Vox Tree Layer Panel. I'm going to right click and choose Auto-Retopo again. You don't have to recreate your splines. As long as you don't clear these, 3D Coat will keep these intact every time you make another attempt. So hit OK. Okay, this time it did a little bit better. So sometimes just simply just making another attempt without really making any major adjustments can help. So let's go to the select tool, faces, reduce my brush size a little bit. So we're just going to delete the end caps here. Hold down the control key and I'll remove these on the edges. Hit my left bracket key to reduce my brush size just like I would in Photoshop. Let's hit delete. Delete key. Use the brush. With auto snap turned on, just kind of nudge these to the edge. Hold down the shift key to smooth here. Uncheck keep bounds while smoothing. That way it'll allow me to smooth the very ends of the mesh. Otherwise it will ignore it. So I'm just going to leave it as is. However, we want to make one slight adjustment, and that is moving the mesh away from the skin in the areas where it's typically not going to be touching, such as the knee area here. So again, with the brush, with auto snap turned off, I'm just going to kind of nudge this geometry out. Additionally, we could just select the geometry in this area and then use the transform tool to scale it out, but I think the brush is probably going to work just fine. Hold the shift key and just lightly tap to smooth. So let's go ahead and hit relax. And it's going to relax the entire mesh. So I think we're good. Let me nudge this just a bit more. Okay, now let's select all faces on layer with this icon. And I'm going to use extrude faces. Just going to push it away from the skin just a little bit. I want to be careful that the geometry here in the crotch area is not overlapping. There we go. So I'll hit escape to drop the tool. and I'll go to the Retopo Models palette. I've already created a new project folder here for the clothing. I'm going to go down to the layer here in the Retopo Objects layer panel. I'm going to double click to rename this. There we go.